This is a Swedish Princess Cake. I've been wanting to make this for absolute ages now, but the thought of doing all of the steps kind of kept me from it. But I made it and it's so ridiculously delicious, and I've broken it down into 7 or 8 easy steps for you guys so it won't be as daunting. Keep watching to hear what some Swedish friends had to say when we gave them a slice of this cake to try. Okay, step number 1, pastry cream. Make this first so it has time to set while you make the rest of the cake. Pastry cream is pretty much a custard. We start by infusing the milk with some vanilla. Use a vanilla pod, split it in half and use the back of your knife to scrape up the beans. Put the vanilla beans along with the pod into the milk and get it simmering on a medium heat. We just want to heat this up, not boil it or scorch it. Once it comes to a simmer, turn the heat off and let it sit. This way the vanilla will be nicely infused into the milk. While the milk is heating, separate out the egg yolks. Put the egg yolks into a large bowl along with some sugar and corn flour. Then whisk this until everything is well combined. You will have this thick, glossy, deep yellow mixture. Now we temper the eggs. This is the process of adding warm milk to the egg mixture just a little at a time. Fish out the vanilla pod. Add the warm milk into the eggs a cupful at a time, whisking it in immediately. Add about half of the warm milk. Now the eggs have also come up to temperature, so you can add the egg mixture back into the pot with the rest of the warm milk without worrying about it curdling. Put this back on the stove over a medium heat and cook it while stirring continuously. Stir this continuously for about 5 minutes. Do not stop stirring because the mixture will thicken and form lumps. You will notice the mixture becoming very thick and much harder to stir, almost a pudding-like texture. Kill the heat immediately. Strain this out into a bowl to get rid of any lumps that may have formed. Push as much of the cream through the sieve to make sure that you scrape down the bottom of the sieve as well. We don't want to waste any of the pastry cream that we worked so hard to make. Add in some cold cube butter and stir this until it melts and dissolves into the cream. Once all the butter is mixed through, your pastry cream is ready. Cover this with some cling film. Make sure the cling touches the surface of the pastry cream so that it doesn't form a skin. And then pop this in the fridge to set. And just like that, step 1 of making a princess cake is done. Moving on to step 2, we need to make the cake. You can do either a basic sponge cake or a Genoese cake. For this, we start by adding eggs and some additional egg yolks into the bowl of your stand mixer. The exact quantities are in the caption below. Go in with some sugar and then whisk it just a little bit to combine everything. Pop the bowl on top of a pot of boiling water. We want to double boil this just to get the eggs up to temperature. We don't need to cook the eggs at this point because it will cook when we're baking the cake. Keep whisking the eggs and the sugar on top of the pot of water until it reaches a temperature of about 55 Celsius. Then take it off the heat and get it whisking with a whisk attachment on your stand mixer. Do this on a medium to high speed. At first, the bowl will be quite warm as you touch it. Let this whisk away for 5 to 7 minutes until the volume has tripled in size and the bowl feels much cooler to touch. You will end up with this silky, fluffy, pale yellow mixture. Now we start folding in the flour. Sift the flour into the batter. Do this about a third of the flour at a time. Sifting it in helps to keep that lightness of the batter rather than if you spoon the flour in. Then gently fold the flour into the batter, making sure to really scrape the batter from the bottom to the top to make sure no lumps of flour has sunk to the bottom. Be as gentle as possible. As the first bit of flour is incorporated into the batter, sift in a bit more and repeat. This cake doesn't need any baking powder or bicarbonate. All the rise comes from the fluffy beaten eggs, so you have to be super gentle when you fold in the flour so that you don't end up knocking out too much of the air that we whisked in. Once all your flour is added, you should be able to make a figure 8 with the batter. Now add in the melted butter. This step is what differentiates a normal sponge cake from a Genoese cake. The addition of melted butter. This makes the cake softer and butterier than a normal sponge cake. Add about half of the melted butter and gently fold it into the batter. Make sure that it's mixed in well with no streaks of butter left. Then add in the other half of butter and fold it all in. Once your batter is nicely mixed through, it will look glossy and nice. 100% you have to make sure there are no streaks of butter running through it. Pour your batter into a lined baking tin. Ideally, I should have used a 9-inch baking pan, but I only had an 8-inch. Pop the cake into the preheated oven and bake for about 20 minutes until a skewer inserted to the middle comes out clean. Take the cake out of the oven and let it cool down just for a few minutes. Run an offset spatula between the cake and the side of the baking pan to release the cake from the tin. Pop a board on top of the cake and then flip it over to easily take the baking pan off. Peel the baking paper and flip the cake back, and you should have this beautifully springy and light cake. Trim off the top of the cake. It's okay to trim a little bit extra just to even the cake out as much as possible. Plus, eating the top bit of the cake while it's still warm is one of the greatest joys of baking cake at home, in my opinion. Now comes the slightly tricky part. Slicing this cake into 3 layers as evenly as possible. Keep one hand on top of the cake to hold it steady. Slide the serrated knife, keeping it as straight as possible. Now I'm eyeballing it to measure out a third of the cake, but you can use a ruler to do this. Keep checking from the sides to make sure that it's cutting straight. When you get to a third of the way into the cake, turn the cake round so that the uncut side is closer to you, and then keep cutting. Repeat the same process to cut the other third so that you have 3 even layers of cake. Now the reason you need to bake this in a 9-inch cake tin and not an 8-inch is because you will have slightly thinner layers. Remember how I told you guys at the start that I gave some of this to some Swedish friends? They mentioned that the cake was delicious, but that the layers should have been a little bit thinner so that you get a better jam to cream to cake ratio. Separate out 3 layers and then keep it to cool down completely before you assemble. That is now the second big step of this princess cake done. Now the third step is super simple. Pour some cold whipping cream into the bowl of your stand mixer and whisk it until it's thick and stiff. Step 3 done. Step 4 is making the creme diplomat. Before you panic, it's just mixing together some of the whipping cream and some of the pastry cream that we made earlier. Take the cling film off the tube pastry cream, give it a quick whisk to smoothen it out, and then spoon about half a cup or so of the pastry cream into another bowl. To this, add just over about half of the whipped cream and then whisk it together. Delicious and done. I'm also putting a little bit of pastry cream into a piping bag just to pipe it onto the cake later. Keep everything in the fridge until you need to use it, especially if you live somewhere warm like I do. Now it is time to assemble this cake. Then dab a little bit of the pastry cream to help the cake layer stick to the board. Now take what was the topmost layer of cake, the one where we cut the crust off. Keep this on the cake board, the crust side up. Spoon on a little bit of pastry cream, just about a spoonful, and then spread it out just to form a thin layer on top of the cake. Then pipe a border with the pastry cream that we put in the piping bag. This will be a bit of a wall to stop the jam from pouring out over the sides of the cake. Spoon some raspberry jam and then spread it out into an even layer across the cake until you get to that little wall of pastry cream. Take the bottommost layer of the cake, flip it so that the cut side is facing up, and then keep this on top of the raspberry jam and the pastry cream. Then pile on the rest of the pastry cream, push it in an even layer almost to the edge of the cake, but not all the way so that it drips over the sides. And now we go in with the creme diplomat that we made earlier. This is where you have to work a bit fast. ideally in a nice cold room. The Singapore heat was killing me at this point, trying to make sure that this cream was not melting all over the place. Whisk the creme diplomat just a little bit, just to thicken it up a bit, and then layer it on top of the pastry cream, and then almost form a bit of a dome shape with it. Ideally, it should hold its shape nicely. And then add the final layer of cake on top. This layer should have been just a little bit thinner so that it holds that dome shape better. But don't worry, let me show you how we rectify this to get a pretty dome shaped princess cake in the end. You simply ice the outside of the cake with the remaining whipped cream. Make sure that it's nicely dome shaped. Now, I then pop this in the freezer for about 20 minutes to chill, just so that the cream sets a little and holds its shape. If you live somewhere that isn't hot and humid, you probably don't need to do that. We are almost at the end now. While your cake is chilling, color your marzipan. I'm using store-bought marzipan because it's just easier than making it at home. Always add a drop or two, knead it in, and then add more color if you need it. Depending on how pigmented your food coloring is, a couple of drops is usually plenty to get the color you want. Knead it well so that the color is uniform throughout your marzipan, and then wrap it in some cling film and set this aside to use once the cake is set. I'm also doing a tiny bit of marzipan in pink for the little rose decoration on top. Once your cake has chilled, we can start to roll out the marzipan. Knead the marzipan for about a minute just to get it nice and pliable. Flour your work surface with a bit of corn flour. Corn flour helps to stop the marzipan from sticking to the table, and then sprinkle a tiny bit of corn flour on top, just enough to stop it from sticking. As you're rolling it out, you can keep adding more if you feel like your marzipan is sticking to the table or the rolling pin. Roll the marzipan out from the middle outwards, always lifting it up and turning it. There is nothing more annoying than rolling a whole thing out to find a bit of it is stuck to the table. If your cake is about 8 inches in diameter, then you want the marzipan to be about 12 inches or so. Don't make it much bigger either. Wrap it around the rolling pin and then carefully lift it up and throw it over the cake like you would do a tablecloth. Gently tug at the ends and press it down onto the cake using your fingers. And use your palms to shape the dome part a little bit. Now, if you have a fondant smoother, use that, but I don't have one here in Singapore, so I'm just using another cake board to smoothen out the top and the sides and to really tuck in the ends so that it sticks to the cake very well. Use a sharp knife and trim off the excess. Now make the marzipan rose with the pink marzipan. Make sure your fingers are dipped in some corn flour so that the marzipan doesn't stick to it. Pinch a tiny bit of the pink marzipan, flatten it out, and then roll it. Repeat with another pinch of marzipan and then just stick it on. I'm just going to let you watch how it's done because I don't know if I'm explaining this part very well. Right, now that the little rose is done, let's finish this cake off. This is the 8th and final step of making this princess cake. If you guys have made it this far, thank you for watching, and please do try to make this cake at home. Simply tie a ribbon around the base, sprinkle the top of the cake with some icing sugar, and then use the back of the knife just to put a small indent right on top of the cake, and then pop that little pink rose inside that indent. And that's it. This super delicious Swedish princess cake. Make it. It's got all the best things in one place. Soft vanilla cake, pastry cream, jam, whipped cream, and marzipan. Gosh, so good.